So, Prasanna, we sense the world through our senses, get that input, and create a model of the world within. We call it as mental models or cartoon in the mind. And this cartoon in the mind is very useful in terms of making decisions, alterations, designs, and so on. Right? So, as we imbibe this mental faculty and make it better and better of creating useful mental models, then that habit is quite powerful for better living, right? So, what do you think um, could be the ways by which one could practice this kind of creating cartoons, relevant cartoons in the mind?
So when you're talking about cartoons, I'm thinking like, is it a black and white or color? What actually runs in the mind? And I think that's a question that's quite debatable because,
Right.
right? I
Right.
mean, it's very difficult to really say what is it.
Each one has different cartoon in their
Yeah.
minds.
So what we capture, how much we capture, the details of that, it really varies from person to person.
Correct.
It depends upon what captures their interest, what really inspires them. So there are different factors that influence each person. Now, mental models are just our interpretation and perception of the, I would say, complex reality that is around us, because there's so much around us. So much information, there's so much to see.
And so much information cannot go into.
Exactly. So we capture some of it based upon our interest or whatever, attracts us. And so it's just a simplified, a logical representation that we store in our minds just for our own reference.
Fantastic. Simplified, logical representation.
Yeah. So
or a reduced order.
Reduced order. So it's like you're browsing on the internet. There was a time when we used to browse on the internet and we used to store certain information on our local disk. So for easier, quicker reference, we organize it in a way we would like it, so that
we would be comfortable with.
It's something we will understand, so that we can always go back and pull it out as and when required.
Wonderful.
So mental models are something like that. That's our local data, local disk storage, like what we store, something that we see it on our own understanding and what we want, how we want to use it. Now, and they're really helpful because, as I said, you can always go and quickly pull out information that you need. It helps you connect the dots faster also, because there's already something there, and every experience we keep upgrading our mental models. So and they really help us sometimes to focus. When we want to focus, we know what exactly we want to focus on because we have a picture in our mind, right? So there's to help us focus and everything. It also helps, as you said, in decision making, to make choices, because these are the criteria that I am interested in. These are the priorities I am looking for. So, or these are the goals I have. So how do they match? So all these things help us to focus, analyze, rationalize people or situations, events, the past, and maybe even try to project and forecast the future also.
So, constantly upgrading oneself in terms of creating mental models relevant to our aim or purpose is a practice you feel is an important practice.
It is very essential because as we keep talking about change, and change being a constant in life, and so much is changing around us in terms of life that was probably in the 80s or 70s is not what it is today. So it's been rapid, technologically, and the way everything has changed so much. Even in the last 2 years, because of COVID, we have spoken about so many changes that have taken place. So the mental models which are there, see what actually happens is, like every other thing in life, like current, if you know how to use it and use it the right way, it is useful for us. But when it is not, you don't know how to use it and you don't use it the right way for the right reasons, then it doesn't work for us. So take it, so the mental models are also the same thing. They'll some work for you, some may not work for you, and some could be partly working and not partly working. So to be aware of that and to constantly, as you said, to look at them and deconstruct them and reconstruct them
Right.
has to be an ongoing process.
Wonderful. Deconstruction is also important. For example, I will give this very peculiar example. You have this agarbatti stand, no? The moment I say agarbatti stand, what comes to your mind is that whatever lamp-like stuff where you insert, no? We never come across in our minds, unless we are trained to, with a banana to be an agarbatti stand, right? That's a deconstruction that I do as far as a mental model is concerned. So this constantly, as you rightly pointed out, the mental model could also be a deterrent to thinking differently, and therefore it's always important also to do deconstruction.
Yeah, because the mental models are what also in a way you can map them to the belief systems that we create. And the world is changing so much. Everybody is changing. There's so much change around us. Just being stuck to certain models which are from the past, which are
So
20
it's
years
like
old, 30
screens.
years old, is not really helping you learn, grow, and explore and move forward in life. So rather than being stuck with certain mental models, being so attached to them because you want to be right.
Correct.
Right? It's be open and willing to learn, to explore, to grow.
To be able to use different filters,
Yeah,
and understand something.
Exactly.
Understand the world around.
Because it's not it's just that it also take up mind space, and we don't want to clutter our mind with just too many mental models which are not even working. So it's really, I think, a good practice to do that regular clearing of what is actually essential and trying to simplify them also.
I liked what you said about organizing your model, mental model, in such a way that you'll just take an appropriate mental model for a particular task or a decision.
Be willing to deconstruct them, totally throw them out if they're not working for you. You have to be willing to do that and be open to that this is how we are growing, and this will really help clear tons of energy, because otherwise we'll be just going through those mental models in a loop and not really getting out of them, and that affects our decision making, the kind of choices we make, because we are so paralyzed. We just get stuck in that.
So it's a constant effort to keep doing this, refinement after refinement on the mental models that you create within.
And it's I think it's just starting. So once you realize that these mental models, and then upgrading them and deconstructing them and reconstructing them, you start enjoying that practice. And just it's like clearing up all the data in your mind and keeping it very simple, decluttering the mind and just keeping what is really essential, so that it also makes because it clears up so much time, energy, and mind space, your productivity and performance also starts improving drastically because of that.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Prasanna, we go through a lot of situations. We look at various circumstances. We play a role, or we just see it happening. In all this, there is a perspective of how you view it, and therefore you mend yourself appropriately. For example, you would have first joined a job. You would have thought this is the way the job would pan out to be. And when you enter the job and start doing the job, being there, you see that the entire circumstance is very different from what you thought, right? And therefore your perspective changes, right? This constantly happens as you move forward in your career or job. You must have definitely experienced such a thing, right? Now you're doing a completely different profession, right? So you must have changed your perspective on both life and career. Tell us about it.
So yeah, when I first joined a job, it was more because yes, you got something to campus placement. It's something, it's aligned with what you have studied in your acads, and perhaps whatever understanding you have of life and the world at that moment in time, which is pretty at that moment it seems like yes, we know everything, but like you really understand later that it was just the beginning. Yeah. So yes, at that time it was more of like financial security and a good job in a good location, a good company, and these are the basic things that make up a so-called dream job. And then once you enter the job, as you said, there's a whole lot of stuff. Nobody ever teaches you all these things, and then it's all these long hours you put in, and then having to, like I was staying as a PG in a paying guest accommodation, so doing all the chores by yourself, cooking, washing, and everything, grocery shopping, and then keeping those accounting of the daily expenses and everything. So all this start adding up. So after like a few months into my job, I was like, oh my God, I was like so appreciative of my parents. Like they're doing this for like years together. My mom is waking up every day in the morning and getting us ready, cooking for us without getting bored. And here I was like, what do I cook today? What do I eat today? What do I, make
Your
today?
perspective of your parents completely changed.
Completely. I was like, oh my God. And my dad goes to, college every day teaching the students and everything. And like, I'm like 9 months into my job and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And like, how do they keep their motivation running? It's not easy. So that's where you start realizing there's so much more to life than just getting into a job and getting one paycheck every month because it's not easy.
Right.
And so that's where it all and then so the after my first job, the second job, I used to make sure that I wasn't working long hours, that I wasn't saying yes to everything my manager was saying, that I would keep that time for myself each day. So not that it worked out every time, but it was something, a conscious thing that was at the back of my mind, that I need to take care of
So
myself.
you now looked at priorities
Exactly.
of what to take care of, definitely necessities and luxuries.
Yeah. And then of course in my second job there was a lot of travel which was involved. I used to travel all over the world, and it was really good because it was new experiences, learning, from different cultures, different places and everything, which is so important because in a way it,
Opens up your mind.
yeah, in a way it deconstructed so many mental models I had.
Yeah, correct.
So like lots of
Lot of
things.
inhibitions that you would have had
Yes. So one after the other, they all
just
broke.
withered away.
Yes. It's like this is not important. And then you realize what it is, the big picture of life and
Right.
all that. And there was a time I used to think that uh, I am the kind of person who will only do work if somebody gives me who will tell me what to do, then I'll do it. I'll do it really well, but somebody has to tell me.
That's how you perceived job.
That is how I perceived my job. And then there came a time in my life when I just couldn't take that that 9 to 5 job, or whatever they call it, that 9 to 9 job, and I just the whole my perception and perspective, my expectations of what I wanted from life and myself changed so much. So I wanted something more meaningful, something which was more more purpose in life, which probably made an impact, or it made a difference in somebody's life. So it all came from that angle. So it
So
no
in a way,
longer.
your perspective of life itself was changed.
Yes. No, money was not the thing, was not the driving factor. It was more about what kind of an impact am I making? Am I making, is my existence making a difference in this world?
So there was a realization that, uh, and there was this shift of importance
Yes.
that came about.
Yeah. So it's basically like, you do empathize with certain problems or issues that people are facing, and then you want to take that up and do what you can to help people work through those such issues and problems and show them that this is a way it can be done. So that is where it was a surprise for me too, that a day came when I just wanted to quit my regular job, that the comfort and security of a regular paycheck, and just jump. It's like
And centered yourself around
yeah,
the
it was
joy
like
of
jumping off a cliff, as I call it. You just had to take that. I just
you
took that
plunged
decision.
into it.
I just plunged in. And like the Indiana Jones movie, yeah, a bridge appeared, even though it was not very clear all the time. It was foggy sometimes, misty sometimes, but the calling was so strong inside that the path kept showing and opening up and opening up and clearing up.
So it was very different when you started the job, when you got placed in a job. Your perspective of how the life would be, and now how the life would be, is very different. And these
Completely,
perspectives keep changing.
absolutely, yeah.
Having a perspective helps in terms of being able to understand what would be the purpose for which you work, right?
And it's also
Nice.
because of you learn so much from others too around you. So it's like an inspiration.
Right. So, as I know you, you've done this over and over. Given a particular, let's say, action or a purpose or a problem, you've been able to break that problem down into sub problems, sub functions, so that you could arrange them in a particular way so that the end need is met, right? The solution for a problem is met, right? How do you do this? And is this habit something important to imbibe? What I'm talking about is breaking a particular task, a problem, into sub problems, handleable problems, right? You often talk about this steps in a ladder,
Right.
right? So, um, how does it help in terms of looking at the steps rather than the height that you have to climb, so that it makes it easy for you to uh, reach that top?
So yeah, so if we want to climb Mount Everest, we need to know where we are going. So that is the
Correct.
goal, or the destination, or whatever it is, our guiding, the lighthouse, whatever you can call
Right.
it. But to get there, like the famous Chinese saying that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step.
For the first step. Very
Yeah.
nice.
So yes, that is your a destination, but then it all depends on what you have already spoken about. Like the planning needs to be there. You have to break it up into small steps, tiny, the tiny steps, because that is all we can achieve at any moment of time.
And we also have some target that we've been able to achieve.
Yes. So the reason is anything difficult and impossible in life, and there were so many things in the world which were seemed difficult and impossible, which humanity has achieved. It's just because, like, even though there's an end goal or an end point that we're looking at, it's breaking a goal, a project, uh, a problem into sub parts, into smaller parts, and then trying to see how we can solve that part and then go to the next part. So it just not only makes it easier, it basically gives us a better understanding of the whole system, and what we come up with, uh, be they the solutions or the actions or the steps that we need to take, they actually help us build a more efficient system.
Also, you don't get stressed because you have been able to see the progress from one step to the other, one step to the other, and that way um, there is progress that you're seeing, and therefore you don't feel stressed out. Even though the task that you have to perform or the problem that you have to solve is big, you have now made into small steps such that it is possible for you to climb one step after the other.
Yeah, and that is what it is all about, which we Even course correction becomes easier because it's a tiny step. So even if you make a mistake, it's a tiny mistake and you can always correct it, and then whatever correction you need to take, it becomes much easier. And as you said, it's less stressful. So this is something we teach so regularly to our students about tiny improvements, tiny changes, tiny habits, tiny steps, tiny actions. Okay, to whatever change you want to make, break it down into tiny things that you can do each day, so that it is not, you don't feel like you're doing something.
That is, you are able to see the milestones,
Yeah.
reaching the milestones.
And this is also something we talk about, the James Clear Atomic Habits. He talks
Right.
about the continuous improvements,
Wow.
and how 1% change a day can, in a year can bring you about 37 times the difference.
And most designs of systems, right, all systems that the engineers handle usually consist of such sub-functions connected to each other in such a way that the final, for example, if it is a house that has to be built, right, you start with the foundation, right, that's a subtask, you finish the foundation, and then one step, one step, one step, finally you see a beautiful building, right. The beautiful building is in the mind, but that shouldn't stress you out and saying, oh, okay, I'm not able to achieve. So the engineer actually breaks it down into small tasks so that each one is accomplishable. And that translated into a sort of engineering sense or a habit that we create in our lives makes it better for us to achieve whatever we wanted to achieve.
So clear, well-defined processes.
Well-defined processes.
Yes, and
Of course,
systems.
the art of uh, those well-defined processes, making or creating such well-defined processes, is what you keep defining yourself in, and
Yeah.
that habit develops
That,
into
that is
a
that is what is the what do I call the behind
skill.
the behind Kaizen and Lean Sigma, Six Sigma. It's all
All.
breaking down that big thing into the tiny parts and tiny
Okay.
processes and the tiny steps, and then achieving that efficiency at each level, so that totally together, the compounded effect of it is what gives you the final
So
result.
essentially, the skill of breaking into different parts and being able to accomplish is something that you can keep practicing and
Yeah.
improving that skill.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.